So what we're going to do now is we're going to go over how to multiply fractions together. Multiplying fractions together is extremely easy. You just have to know these 3 rules to multiply any fraction together. 1, multiply the top numbers together. Once you multiply the top numbers together, you write that number down in your answer as your new top number. And that top number is called a numerator. So multiply your top numbers together first. Second, multiply your bottom numbers together and write that down in the bottom of your answer. Those bottom numbers are numerators. You multiply those together, get your new denominator as your answer. Once you multiply the top numbers together, multiply the bottom numbers together, then you simplify. Always simplify a fraction. I'm going to put a link right over here in the corner on my video on how to simplify fractions. So let's go over this first example here. Our first example is 2/5 times 1/3. Just like the rules say, I multiply my top numbers together and write that down, and the top up here is the numerator in my answer. 2 times 1 is 2. Then I'm going to multiply my denominators together. If you need a calculator to multiply those together, then use your calculator. 5 times 3 is 15. I then need to see if I can simplify this. In my video, I talked about the numbers I need to use to simplify a fraction. Those are some examples. Always start off with 2. So 2 divided by 2, 2 will go on the top number, but let's see if 2 will go into 15. 15 divided by 2. No, because I get a decimal. That means this number is in lowest terms, and I'm done simplifying that fraction. Multiply the top numbers together, multiply the bottom numbers together. Let's look at our second example. Our second example has us multiplying 1/4 times 2/9. I multiply the top numbers together to get my new top number. 1 times 2 is 2. Some people may need their calculator to multiply the bottom numbers together, so let's do that. 4 times 9 equals 36. My new bottom number, my new denominator. I always try to simplify a fraction. So the numbers I check again, 2, 5, 7, 11, so forth, all those prime numbers, always start off with 2. 2 divided by 2, looks like 2 will go into the top number. Let's see if it'll go into the bottom number. 36 divided by 2, 18. I keep trying 2 until 2 doesn't work, or until 2 is bigger than the numbers I'm dealing with in the fraction, which is the case now. That means that number right there is in lowest terms. It's simplified. Example 3. Now I need to remember my rules for multiplying positive and negative numbers. I'm going to put a link right over here in the corner on my rules for multiplying positive and negative numbers. Another thing that you need to remember when you're dealing with fractions that are negative, only one of these numbers is negative. And usually people assign that negative sign to the top number. So that's going to be a -8. I'm going to take -8 and multiply it to 9. I don't have to put the negative in my calculator. I'm just going to go 8 times 9 is 72. And then I need to remember my rules for multiplying. If the signs are different, my answer is negative. I'm going to multiply my bottom numbers together to get this bottom number. 3 times 4 is 12. Another thing that we need to remember, before we try to simplify this fraction is a division problem, and I need to see whether or not I can actually divide those numbers. So let's try that. I already have 72 in my calculator. I'm just going to try and divide it by 12. Divided by 12. Look, I get a whole number. That means I don't have to go through the process of simplifying this fraction. Then I need to remember my rules for dividing. If the signs are different, my answer is negative. -6 is what I get when I multiply -3, -8/3 times 9/4. Always check and see if those numbers can be divided before you try to actually simplify the fraction. Our last example, example 4. Remember, when you've got a fraction, this negative goes with the top one and this negative goes with the top one up here. So it's like I've got -2 times -4 because I'm multiplying the top numbers together. A negative times a negative is a positive. Multiply the bottom numbers together. 3 times 5 is 15. I need to simplify this, especially since the top number is smaller than the bottom number. Here are some numbers I need to check and see if they will go into each one of those. Starting with 2. 2 will go into 8, but will 2 go into 15? 15 divided by 2 won't work. 5. Will 5 go into 8? 8 divided by 5? No. 8 divided by 5 will not go into it an even number of times. Notice I've got a decimal. 7. 8 divided by 7. 7 won't go into it. My next number is 11. It's bigger than the one I'm trying to put it into. That means that fraction right there has been simplified.